Okay, so I'm really delighted to have this chat with you two guys because I met Rob and Kate this time last year, just at the point when your leadership team was brand new. And am I right in saying that your role was fairly new, or had you both been in? Yeah,
Both were, weren't they?
Fairly
Both
new,
really,
yeah.
yeah.
I've been in role for about 12 months, but I'd not really been in role for 12 months,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. I was
Yeah.
building up to that point.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And mine was temporary at the time, so just sort of standing in and weren't really sure what was going on.
And you both have a full-time class commitment, is that right too? And you
Mhm.
get leadership time. How much leadership time can school afford to give you?
We get a day.
Yeah.
A day
Which
that covers.
includes PPA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it should you get half a day.
Yeah.
So we warmed you both up very briefly a minute ago, and you both expressed some tiredness, which is not surprising at the end of the school year, and about you managing, activity days, cricket, away, trips away with the children, and you, Kate, I watched you when I arrived today cross a major junction in the middle of at the edge of a city, and beautifully done. It looked as if you took it all in your stride, and that's not always true in teaching and in leadership, is it? That being able to take things in your stride. And so, would it be okay if you shared a little bit about you've introduced some changes in school, haven't you? Around this time of year, and I'm guessing they're about classrooms and which classes people take and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, would you like to share kind of like your experience of that and your thinking about those situations?
We've had quite a lot of meetings, haven't we? Towards the end of this year, trying to figure out where the neediest children are and where the staff need to be to support that next year. And it's been going around in circles at some points, haven't we? Saying, oh, well, could we move this person and could we move that person? And then there's always a reason then why you can't do what you originally said. So after several meetings, we've finally made a decision last week.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And obviously told those people that are most affected, and you had one of the initial phone calls, didn't you?
Yeah. I think people stuck in a rut isn't the right way to put it, because it's not necessarily stuck in a rut. It's not negative particularly, but people get stuck in the comfort zones, and when you take people out of the comfort zones, that's when the issues start to arrive. I know it myself. I was in year 6 and I was asked to come out of year 6 so I could take more of my leadership on and I could do more management things. So I know what it's like myself. There's just been sort of mumblings and people talking and having little private conversations rather than speaking to us and saying I'm not sure about that. It's sort of little conversations that have been going on between certain people, which has sort of made it really hard to deal with, because dealing with gossip rather than somebody coming talking to you face to face is a lot more tricky, isn't it?
So in the kind of like you were talking, and the stuck in a rut was kind of like a phrase that we introduced, but it's really about when you get stuck in your thinking, isn't it? When your thoughts are, I am better in this, age 10 to 11 year 6 group rather than being in any other age group.
Yeah.
And I experienced that myself, and it's what do you feel knowing a little bit about state of mind and the way that thoughts just pass through, and until we give them some energy and they do stay, and we build them up, until we've got a whole head full of thinking about this one thing that we're really fearful of underneath. Have you experienced that yourselves in leadership, that or in any part of your life?
Yeah, I know for me, sort of going through when we had Ofsted in and when we were first looking at the data and how that was going to be presented and things like that, it was just that was your whole thinking, wasn't it? And trying to get, because we had so many different ways of doing it, and is this the best way? And you just got so involved in actually that then you couldn't see the bigger picture. You had to stop and moved back before we said, actually, yeah, that does work, because that will show that, rather than, oh God, does it show this, that will, you needed to step back from it.
Yeah. And to do the stepping back, because that's a really good point, Kate. What do you mean? Do you mean step back away from the Ofsted thinking, or what do you mean?
Partly, I think stopping just thinking this is for Ofsted and thinking about this is for us as a school, and this is to inform what we're doing and the reasons behind what we do. And also, just for myself, is stop thinking about just that one thing, and it is just stop. My stepping back is I just need to stop and switch off from everything.
Yeah.
And then I find that things just sort of form in my head clearer, and then I can say, oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
And that bigger picture thing is what we're trying, particularly in what we're just talking about with certain members of staff. It's about you might be more comfortable in that class, and you might want to stay there. However, the need of the children is this, and that's why we're putting people to work with the strengths. Obviously, we want people to be happy where they're working. But at the end of the day, we come to work because we want the children to get the best out of our school, and that's the key thing about it. If the need of the children is here, then this is where certain people need to work.
Yeah, and your vision is fantastic, Rob. And if you weren't leading that vision, school would be driven by the way people thought, wouldn't it? You know, if that person thought, I am best in year 6 because that's where I'm comfortable, then that wouldn't be, as you rightly say, the best for the children in school. But coming back to something that Kate said about, you know, you were concentrating, your mind was full of data, you were both, you know, you got Ofsted just about to come, which is the UK school inspection, and it's quite a big thing, isn't it? You know, if you don't achieve good or better than good, then, you know, you are re-inspected until that occurs, or you become an academy. So that's a key thing for us in schools. So you can get lost in your thinking about that, which you beautifully illustrated. And it's only when we step back from that thinking and we slow it down. Do you remember, Rob, when I first came last year and I was talking to you about those wisdom spaces, and I was talking about slowing down your thinking, and you said, Annie, I don't get it.
No.
And I was, at the time I got lost in my thinking, I was thinking, oh, right, I haven't explained that, you know. But you came back the next day and you said, I get it, I went for a run.
Yeah.
You went for a run, and your body was moving, but your thinking slowed down.
Mm-hmm.
And in that space, in that moment, fresh thinking comes in, or wisdom, or a reflection or an idea of being able to do something differently. So those teachers that are gossiping, that's the way they know to do it. And when you know there's a different way, it's almost like you're in a cave and suddenly you see a crack of light, and you think, oh, there's hope. You know, there's a way out of this. There's a different way to do it. So how going back to that situation and knowing what you do about state of mind, and that, you know, finding a quiet place or a reflective place, as Kate said, helps you to slow down that thinking. What might you do in that instant another time where there's lots of thinking going on about decisions that are made, and lots of...
I think it just makes you a bit more conscious about it, doesn't it? It makes you conscious about prioritising and what's the most important thing, and what needs to be done, and what can be saved till later, and rather than getting your head all busied with things that aren't as important or aren't as deadline orientated, then that's what you can work on, as opposed to, right, this needs to be done for next week, so I need to focus on that, and let's just make sure that bit's done. And then I think what is really good is that we're all pretty supportive of each other as well. So if there is anything that I need, I know I can speak to Kate, and Kate can help me out, and vice versa. And the rest of the leadership team are on the same wavelengths.
Yeah.
Too.
And you guys have worked out a way to be together, haven't you? Because we did that input last year, and you're mindful of when you're, you know, when I was first ahead, I worked a 90-odd hour week. That's not sustainable long term. You know, sometimes I even went up to 100 hours and above because of everything going on. And when I look back, I think, God, that was a dreadful role model, but that's the way I knew how to do it. And I used to set myself a goal, and I'd get there and I'd think, oh yeah, well, I've done that, so there's this to do now as well. And I would never get, and teachers are like that, aren't they? I mean, part of that is a good skill in teaching because you're constantly looking at, you know, in a spiral of engaging children in the learning and moving on and upwards. But part of it, if you're not aware of you doing it and you get into that place of and mindful of all sorts of things going on, then your state of mind brings feelings with it, doesn't it? It brings feelings of, what would you say, you know, when you're really...
And I had a bad week last week, didn't I? Rob will laugh because I think it was Rob that sort of I knew, and I said, I know that I'm doing it, I know that I'm frustrated, I know that I'm not handling things well, but just by Rob sort of saying, you're not in a very good mood this week, are you? Sort of made me stop and think, yeah, actually, no, I know I'm not, and I need to do something about it. But at that point, I was just really frustrated with things that weren't in my control, and I should have just stopped before it got as bad as it did. But I needed Rob to just say, you're really bad mood this week, aren't you? But we have that relationship where...
You've got to be comfortable enough with each other to be able to say that.
I
wouldn't walk up to anyone and sort of say, you like it, mate, you're a bugger this week, you. But because we're friends as well as colleagues, it helps that we can sort of banter off each other.
Isn't that great? Because in that moment, you kind of like nudged Kate out of that deep entrenched thinking in the space that we all get into, because that's our human experience. Mr. Cool here isn't always like Mr. Cool, is he?
Oh no, the week before was his turn.
Yeah, it goes backwards and forwards.
We just pick each other up every week.
So when you're in that space, what do you do, Rob? When you were in that space the week before Kate?
It's really, really difficult. I can't sort of lie and say that I pull myself out of it, because sometimes you can't, and I think what's really hard about it is that the little things seem to wind you up even more. So if you're in that state of mind already, and then it can be something tiny, makes you even further into it, and I think having someone who can just say, come on, sort yourself out, what you're doing, just makes you snap out of it. And putting things into perspective, I think spending time with your family and things like that. I go home to my wife and she'll say, well, stop talking about work now. Yeah. I'm not interested in your work day now. Let's have some time together.
Breaking that thinking.
Yeah, and just being able to be open enough to be able to say it, and trusting enough to be able to sort of take it as well. It just really helps, I think. You just need to be told, stop doing that.
And it is just a break in the thinking, isn't it? And it's a way we can do that with members of staff. And I'd love to have this conversation. I can hear that's the returning to class bell, and you're both teaching this afternoon. So thank you both so much for your time in your lunch hour. I should be shot for doing this to you, shouldn't I? But thank you. That was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.